Hi, everyone. We'll be getting started. People are still trickling in. 여기 통역 필요하신 분 있으세요? 없나? 좋아. Okay. Are we set on Zoom? Yay, great. Amazing. Hi, Jomi. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on a rainy day when the trains are really dysfunctional. My name is Jamie, and I'm a member of 노르돌. Yay! Now, when we first heard about Yunseo's case, ICE had already kidnapped Mahmoud Khalil. Momodou Tall had already sued the Trump administration in response to being targeted. And Ranjani Srinivasan had already escaped deportation by crossing the border to Canada. So we knew right away that Yunseo's case was not simply about immigration or her status as a permanent resident, but that this was about the repression of students who came out in support of the Palestinian people who've been facing genocide for the past year and a half. We also knew that this wasn't because Yunseo had been particularly vocal or exceptionally visible or aggressive in her activism. As far as we know, Yunseo never gave an interview. Yunseo never wrote an article. Yunseo never did anything to bring undue attention to herself or warrant this level of targeting. She was just one of the many students at her college sit-in. You know, she was one of the thousands and thousands of students across the country who mobilized and stood up against the genocide in Palestine. So we knew that this happened because her bravery and the bravery of the thousands of students had mobilized more and more people, whether alumni or professors or the parents or workers on and off campus, to come out in support of Palestine. And that is a monumental threat to the ruling class. Knowing this, we at 노르돌 felt that it was important and necessary to bring the people who are concerned about Yunseo's case and invite them to join the broad international movement for Palestine. Now, I know that such an invitation might be difficult to accept for some of you. You know, there might be special risks that you have to consider. But I want to share that in our movement, there's a chant that goes like this: in our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinian. See, we don't have to stop at just protecting Yunseo. In fact, we shouldn't just stop there. We can help build a movement that will defend all of us today and tomorrow. A movement through which Palestine will become free. Now, what we know for certain is that the bigger we are, the harder it is to silence us. And the more that we come together, the harder it is for them to isolate us or corner us into fear and submission. So thank you again to everyone who came out today. We'll spend the next couple hours hearing from our comrades, both at 노르돌 and the Palestinian Youth Movement. We have attorneys from CUNY Clear who will provide a Know Your Rights training. We'll have some announcements, and And then we'll go into breakout groups to discuss and process everything that we've learned and heard today and figure out what we can do when we leave here today. But before I get into all of that, a couple things. We have a letter writing station where folks are welcome to write letters directly or in support of Yunseo, and then we'll send those letters to her lawyers. So please feel free to stop by. We have really cute letterhead papers. And then we will also be setting up screen printing, so you can grab cute postcards of our original design, hands off all students. And lastly, I'm very, very inspired and proud to share that people in Korea are also activated by this and have sent us a video in solidarity with Yunseo and all of the students facing repression. So this video is from a group of students and youth. They're called the Student Coalition for Palestine. They're a broad coalition of over 200 Korean organizations in solidarity with Palestine, and they've been organizing since October 2023, just like us. They organize bi-weekly rallies. They also have a campaign against the South Korean corporation Hyundai for selling equipment used to displace Palestinians. And they generally have the objective to raise the consciousness for Korean people for Palestine. And as soon as they heard about Yunseo and her case, they reached out to us and asked how they could help from afar. So we will now play their message and then continue with the program. Thank you.
안녕하세요. 저는 팔레스타인과 연대하는 학생 공동행동의 아린이라고 합니다. The Student Coalition for Palestine, or PADAK, is a multinational coalition of students across several universities in the ROK, demanding that our universities and government cut ties with the Zionist occupation and building the movement on our campuses for the total liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea. Yunseo-nim, as your peers and comrades in Korea, we are proud of you for your courageous act in rejecting the status quo of imperialist genocide and affirm our solidarity with you in the Palestinian cause. Despite repression against the movement aimed to divide us, we will never abandon one of our people, and we are more united than the ruling class will ever be. Continue to fight back and remember that you are not alone.
안녕하십니까. 저는 팔레스타인과 연대하는 학생 공동행동의 최종현이라고 합니다. 팔레스타인의 평화와 해방을 위한 대의에 함께했다는 이유만으로 수방과 영주권 박탈을 비롯한 부당한 탄압을 받고 있는 정윤선님께 한국의 학생들이 연대와 응원의 인사를 전합니다. 미국과 마찬가지로 한국에서도 이스라엘은 대학, 기업, 그리고 지자체와 협력하면서 이스라엘의 집단 학살과 식민 점령을 정당화하고 있습니다. 이스라엘의 식민 점령과 집단 학살이 종식되고 팔레스타인의 해방이 이루어지는 그날까지 한국과 미국 그리고 전 세계의 팔레스타인 연대 운동은 하나입니다. 팔레스타인과 연대하는 학생 공동행동은 정윤선님의 부당한 탄압이 종식되고 팔레스타인 해방이 이루어지는 그날까지 끝까지 연대하고자 합니다.
안녕하세요, 윤서님. 저는 파락에서 활동을 했었고 서강대 인권실천 모임 노고지리에서 활동하는 송현이라고 합니다. 우선 트럼프 정부의 탄압에도 불구하고 연대하는 용기를 보여주셔서 정말 감사드립니다. 팔레스타인 민중들이 겪는 어려움과 집단 학살을 묵인하지 않기 위해 그리고 윤서님처럼 팔레스타인과 연대하는 사람들이 외로움을 느끼지 않게 하기 위해서 저도 더 열심히 투쟁하도록 하겠습니다. 팔레스타인은 반드시 해방될 것입니다. 우리의 저항과 연대를 통해서 해방될 것입니다. 팔레스타인의 해방을 감사합니다.
While the Zionist criminal regime, through the United States and the complicit West, bombs and destroys every single university in Gaza, systematically killing students, professors, researchers, journalists, writers, doctors, scientists, engineers, workers, families, mothers, fathers, babies, destroying cultural heritage, museums, libraries, archaeological sites, mosques, churches, homes, hospitals. A student like us bravely stood up against colonialism, scholasticide genocide, and for that she is being unjustly punished, criminalized, and risking deportation. This is absolutely unacceptable. We firmly stand in solidarity with Yunseo and with all the people who are being targeted for being brave enough, human enough, to stand on the right side of history. If they touch one, they touch all of us. For justice and liberation to bloom, for life to continue, the empire must fall.
Hi, my name is Eileen. I'm a member of the Student Coalition for Palestine, Korea. The current situation must be so scary, targeted by ICE for speaking out against a genocide committed by the Israeli apartheid state. We know this is just another attempt to silence pro-Palestinian voices, but we resist. Despite being miles away, I hope you can feel our sincerity and solidarity. We're ready to do everything we can to support the movement. We applaud the courage of students and scholars like you, Mahmoud Khalil, Mamadou Tal, Rumeisa Öztürk, and the 300 students who recently had their visas revoked, and all those facing repression for standing against genocide. Glory to all our martyrs and free Palestine. Tujeng. Tujeng.
투쟁!
Tujeng.
투쟁!
The people, united, will never be defeated. Today.
Comrades, thank you so much for being here with us today. Raise your hand if this is your first Palestine event. Raise your hand if this is your first time at the People's Forum. All right, can we get a round of applause for our new comrades? Now, this is obviously a town hall to defend Yunseo Chung, but it is also an important moment for us to carry on the mission that she was willing to sacrifice so much for, which is, of course, the liberation of Palestine. And I want to share how happy we are to have you here with us because the conditions of our time make it so urgent for those of us who are already part of the movement for Palestine to find one another and also to do everything we can to expand this movement on every possible front. For the last 18 months, we have witnessed the unthinkable, the Zionist genocide in Gaza and its attempt to ethnically cleanse not only all of Palestine, but the entire Levant. And in order to achieve this, the Zionist entity has committed atrocity after atrocity. The occupation has now dropped more than 85,000 tons of bombs on Gaza alone. They have slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people and displaced virtually all of the Strip's more than 2 million residents. Nothing and no one have been spared from the carnage. From journalists like Hussam Shabat to doctors and healthcare workers to the smallest children like 6-year-old Hind Rajab, the Zionist entity has proven that there is no humanity, no decency, no sense of morality or limits that can possibly constrain its mission of conquest and ethnic cleansing. We have seen beheaded Palestinian babies. We have seen children clutching the corpses of their parents, the remains of human beings in plastic bags, hospital patients burning alive in their beds. And through it all, we have also seen the unflinching and unconditional support of the United States government for this genocide under both ruling class parties, first under Biden and now under Trump. We have to be absolutely clear, which I think all of us in this room are, that this genocide would not be possible without the US. The US is far beyond simply complicit in this atrocity. It is indisputably the architect and the author of this crime against the Palestinian people and all of humanity. For 18 months and under 2 different administrations, the United States has provided the weapons, the political support, the funding, and the media cover that the Zionist entity needs to carry out its genocide. Trump proved that to us when he secured a ceasefire just before even entering office. He told Netanyahu to sit, and like a good dog, Netanyahu obeyed, because Israel is nothing more than an outpost of the United States. Now the genocide is beginning anew. Gaza is being bombed more severely than ever before. No food has entered the Strip since March 2nd. And this is not happening because the US has lost control of Israel, but precisely because they have always had control of Israel, and it is now opportune for them to resume the genocide once again. So the mask has completely slipped. Our government, which loves to grandstand on the world stage about human rights and the rules-based international order, has now shown the world what it truly stands for, which is nothing more than racism, colonialism, imperialism, and genocide. While the US's government is showing us its true character, there are others who have demonstrated the fullness of their humanity instead. I'm speaking, of course, of our brave students. Mahmoud Khalil, Lekha Kordia, Rumeysa Ozturk, Momudo Tal, Yunseo Chung, and so many others. When Palestine called for assistance, they answered that call by holding their universities accountable. Throughout the student intifada, we saw universities across the country mete out unconscionable repression against their own pupils, who they are charged with protecting, our young people who represent the future. And in that process, what they have done is they have shown everyone, from now until the end of time, that it is not only the US government that is responsible for this genocide, but the entire US ruling class. The rich who own the economy, who run the institutions that comprise our society. Let's take Columbia as one example. We know a board of trustee member at Columbia gave Mahmoud's name to ICE. We also know that one of the trustee members is part of the board of directors of Lockheed Martin, one of the largest weapons manufacturers in the world. It is not one president that is guilty or one university. It is the entire political and economic system of capitalism that has not only enacted this genocide, but set it up so that the ruling class can profit from it. And that's why today our students are being hunted. The Trump administration claims that students like Mahmoud and Yunseo are a threat. They say that they are so-called terrorist sympathizers. So our response today is unequivocal. The only terrorists that we see are the Zionists and the imperialists that back them in Washington and on Wall Street. Our precious students, every Yunseo, every Mahmoud, represent the best of us. They are pillars of morality in a lawless society. It is not because of their academic achievements. It's not because of where they go to school, when they came to this country, or which country they came from. It is because of the fact that in the face of history, in the face of genocide, they did the right thing, they stood up, they fought back, regardless of the consequences to themselves. So if anyone tries to make us ashamed of our students, our answer is this. Yunseo, you make us proud. Mahmoud, you make us proud. Rumeysa, you make us proud. Our students answered the call of history to fight for humanity's future because none of us have a future without Palestine. There is a lot of talk these days about protecting democracy in America. Let's be very clear, the United States was never founded on democratic values. It was founded as a slave society, as a colonizing society. Any shred of democracy that has existed in the United States has only been momentary and only been won by the masses in struggle. Now it is our task to pick up that long tradition, because today, the ruling class, as it always does, is viciously opposing any attempt to establish democracy in this country. And today they sit at the throne of world imperialism, which means that their dictatorship extends to the entire world, and we are seeing this in Gaza right now. If there was ever any kind of democracy that existed in this country in 2023, then it died in Gaza. We cannot turn our backs on an entire people as they are being eliminated by our government and then expect that same government to protect our rights. Aimé Césaire, at the end of World War II, said that fascism begins in the colonies and then returns home. Right now, that process is playing out before our eyes in the repression of our students. Yesterday, we received news that an immigration judge in Louisiana ruled that the government can deport Mahmoud Khalil despite providing no evidence of a crime. All that Marco Rubio was able to produce in support of the government's case was a memo that was only 2 pages long, in which he argued that the government has the right to deport someone based on their, quote, beliefs, statements, or associations, unquote. And the judge signed off on it. This is how the Zionist entity has been treating Palestinians all this time. And for all this time, with the full consent, support, and knowledge of the US government, ICE And virtually every major law enforcement agency in this country has also been collaborating and training with the Zionist occupation forces. They have made Palestine into a laboratory for repression. And in the process, the blood of our Palestinian siblings has watered the seeds of fascism here. I should point out that the US government has always been willing to allow US citizens to be collateral damage in this process. There were no consequences for the Zionist entity after the killing of Rachel Corrie in 2003. There were no consequences last fall when Aysenur Eski Egi was murdered in the West Bank. And right now, as we speak, across the Hudson in New Jersey, the Palestinian community is in mourning. Why? Because 14-year-old Amir Rabi was murdered by the occupation forces in the West Bank just days ago. This was a boy who was born in Bergen County. Someone who could have gone to school with any one of us here or with one of our children. I want to share Mahmoud's closing words from his hearing yesterday because I think it's quite relevant to this link between Zionism and fascism at home. After the judge pronounced the ruling, he said, "I would like to quote what you said last time, that there's nothing more important to this court than due process rights and fundamental fairness. Clearly, what we witnessed today, neither of these principles were present or in this whole process. This is exactly why the Trump administration has sent me to this court, 1,000 miles away from my family. I just hope that the urgency that you deemed fit for me is afforded to the hundreds of others who have been here without a hearing for months." So let's be very clear at this time. This moment is absolutely about the ruling class attempting to crush the movement for Palestine, but it is also about this government seeing how far it can extend its powers at the expense of our rights. For decades, the ruling class has been using white supremacy, xenophobia, anti-blackness to justify building out ICE and militarizing police across this country. There are prisons and detention centers across the land where countless people are being tortured as we speak. They sold us the lie that these tools of repression would only be used against so-called deserving people, so-called criminals. What they are showing us right now is that in actuality, they will mete out this violence to anyone who threatens their rule. They are starting with Mahmoud and pro-Palestine students to see whether the rest of us will abandon them. And that's why we have to be very clear that we will abandon no one and we will not be intimidated. Our only option today is to fight back. We are in a very dangerous time and the risks of speaking out are real, but there is nothing more dangerous than our silence. Submission will not teach the ruling class to be merciful. It will only empower them to extend their repression even further. The only thing that can stop them is you. It is us. It's the people. And we have to fight back in an organized way in order to succeed because our enemies are organized. They have trillions of dollars at their disposal, the most powerful institutions in this country. The only thing that is stronger than them are the working people who actually run this society, who they are dependent on because they are parasitic on us. Today, it's student visa recipients and green card holders, but tomorrow, it will be naturalized and eventually birthright citizens as well. So we're in a situation where we do not have a choice but to come together. And we have to understand that though our enemies are powerful, they are ultimately paper tigers, and it is we who are stronger. Coming together as we have today is the first step. The next step is to take action to defend Yunseo and all other students. Yunseo's case is important because ICE has not yet detained her. She is still free. We have a chance to keep her free, and we have a chance to expand the movement as we continue fighting for her. So we have from now until her next hearing on May 20th to spread her story far and wide in the city and across the country and bring as many people as possible into the movement for Palestine. We will be mobilizing court support for her hearing on May 20th, but even more importantly, we're going to be standing with the Palestinian youth movement on Nakba Day the weekend before. So our ask to you today is to help us make this Nakba Day historic, possibly the largest Palestinian mobilization this city has seen yet, because that is what it's going to take in order to demonstrate to the ruling class that they in fact do not have the power and the people are stronger. Now I'm going to pause here and to talk to us a little bit more about the specifics of what is coming and For you to learn more about the Palestinian youth movement as well, I'd like to invite up Lamis.
Thank you, Kamra Chuyan. Taller than I am. Hi, everybody. My name is Lamis. I'm with the Palestinian Youth Movement. It's really an honor to be here with you all today. I really couldn't have said things better myself. I'll just add a couple words, really. But I think that, you know, what Chuyan just described to us all really shows us that we are in this fight together. We are the only option that we have for the future ahead of us, and we have no choice but to continue the fight. We've been given this responsibility. We are able to put effort forward towards the freedom of Mahmoud, Yunseo, Rumaisa, and so many others for the liberation of Palestine, and we know that it's our responsibility to follow through on it, to put any effort that we can towards it. And I know that that's the reason we're all here, and I know that's what we're going to take with us forward as we go out back into our communities, our neighborhoods, our workplaces, our institutions, and make sure that we're bringing that with us. I actually wanted to talk a little bit about Palestinian Prisoners Day, which, you know, I had totally forgotten this, but I realized today that last year on Palestinian Prisoners Day, which was April 17th, we had a planned protest. The Shut It Down Coalition was planning for a protest in Union Square to mark Palestinian Prisoners Day. And we did that, but actually that morning is when the Columbia encampments had launched. And we knew in that moment, and so many others knew as they came to the protest, as they woke up that morning, they were seeing news of the encampment on their screens, on their social media, that's where we had to be. That was a spark that really struck a nerve for the university, for the administration, for the government, as we can see. But it also reignited really a fire and a responsibility in so many of us and so many students in New York, across the country and across the world. And so I was remembering that on that Palestinian Prisoners Day, you know, we started at Union Square and then took the protest up on the trains and went right up to Columbia University, went right up to the gates. And you know, as we know now, that Mahmoud and so many others were there. They were organizing. They were taking up their responsibility to push the struggle forward, to push the movement forward, to show that whatever we have in front of us, we can still use that for good. We can still put an effort forward towards what we know is right. And we know that our institutions investing in genocide, making money off of bombs being shipped to Israel, our institutions inviting war criminals into our campuses and into our lives, we know that that's wrong. We know, and we know that, and that's what the students knew, and that's what they continue to fight for, and that's what we all continue to fight for. And so, you know, now this year, you know, it's almost again April 17th, almost again Palestinian Prisoners Day, and you know, something that we often repeat in the Palestine movement is that our prisoners are the compass of our struggle. And, you know, even I repeat it so often that we don't stop to think about what that means. What does it mean to be the compass of our struggle? And, you know, I think what Mahmoud and Yunseo and so many others show us is exactly the meaning of that, meaning that they are portraying and acting with the courage, the steadfastness, the responsibility that has been thrown upon them, whether they expected it or not, whether they knew it was coming or not, and showing us all how to fight, how to move forward. You know, Mahmoud tells us himself. Now, you know, we can look back at some of the interviews that he did during the encampments, and you know, I'm sure many people saw the clip of when he was asked what he would do if he was deported, and he said, "I will live." You know, the Palestinian people have lived under occupation for over 100 years, and I will live too, and I will continue to struggle, and this fight goes beyond me. He continues to show us that as he sends us messages, you know, for the world to see, like Chuyan just shared with us, that he thinks about the other detainees that are there, the ones that aren't afforded a speedy trial, the ones whose rights have also been stripped away, the ones who have also been stripped away from their families. And he knows that this fight is not just for him, not just for all the other students that have been targeted for their rightful stance for Palestine, but all of those that have been targeted in this country because it doesn't fit the ruling class's agenda. It doesn't fit what they, what they deem to be their status quo. It doesn't go with the millions and billions of dollars that they want to continue to rake in while silencing the masses, while silencing the working class. We know that that's why they went after Mahmoud. That's why they go after Yunseo. That's why they go after so many people in this country. They are able to, target two birds with one stone. Protect Israel, protect the Zionist entity, the settler colony, continue to make sure that their imperial outposts where they can, do their bidding in the rest of the Middle East, continue to make sure that can stay alive while also, exercising their power, testing the waters, testing the limits of how far they'll be able to go to strip us away of our individual rights, to strip our universities away from anything that a university is actually supposed to be, and they know exactly what they're doing in trying to do all of this. But we know it too. We see it clearly, and we can pinpoint the work that we have ahead of us to fight these powers and to fight the repression and suppression that they're trying to carry out against us, to ensure that they can carry out a genocide wherever they want, whenever they want, right? And we know that we're not going to let that happen. They know we're not going to let that happen. That's why they're coming after our movement. That's why they're coming after our students. That's why they'll continue to come after people. And we know we have to put an end to this. We know that they're trying to make a precedent out of Mahmoud's case. We know that they're trying to make an example out of the Palestine movement. And we know that's why we're going to continue to fight against all of this, not just for Palestine, but for our collective liberation, for our collective futures that we want to see. Which brings me to another saying that maybe people have often been hearing, especially lately, which not only that prisoners are the compass of our struggle, but that Gaza is our compass too. Gaza is the compass, and we've seen that especially over the past 18 months for similar reasons. The steadfastness of the Palestinian people in Gaza, their ability to continue to tell us to go out in the streets, to go out and protest, to go out and make our voices heard, their ability to be under, tons and tons of bombing, displacement, hunger, disease, all of those things, and still know that what we all need is to continue to fight. They haven't thrown their hands up, and they have every right to if they wanted to. So we know that it's our responsibility to continue that fight as well. And Gaza is the compass because it has shown us right from wrong. It has shown us where we should be placing our priorities and our responsibility. It has shown us how so many institutions and parts of our lives are intertwined with the imperialist system, with the ruling class's, interests, with their ability to maintain their power and domination and billions of dollars. It has shown us things that we might not have thought of 18 months ago. What are our schools invested in? What are our teachers teaching in schools? What are our pensions invested in? What should tech companies be doing with their technology and abilities, and manufacturing companies? What should our politicians be looking towards and thinking of, and who should they be accepting money from? Gaza has shown us all of those things. Gaza has shown us the future that we want to see. Gaza has drawn lines for us. Now we can go out in the world and decide which coffee shop we're going to be supporting. Gaza has done those things for us. Gaza has led us to know what our responsibility is in this world, what our life's mission is, because we know that if we can commit to that, if Gaza can be liberated, if Gaza can come out of this, if Palestine can be liberated, then actually the rest of the world will follow. The reason we say we're in our thousands and our millions, we're all Palestinian, is because it's not just out of solidarity. It's because we know actually our future, the world's future, depends on Palestine, depends on Gaza. It depends on the outcomes of this genocide and on the outcomes of of Palestine and Palestinian liberation. That's why we commit to it. That's why we fight for anyone who has been targeted for standing on the right side of history, for standing up for justice, and that's why we're never going to back down. This isn't just about one person. This isn't just about me or you. It's about our future. It's about our entire country. It's about our entire world and our ability to create the future that we want to see. So I'll end there just with one last thing, is we really have to ask ourselves, where will this end? You know, where will we let it end? What else will they take away from us? They'll go after our students, they'll go after green card holders, they'll go after citizens, they'll go after our universities, they'll go after our research institutions, they'll go after healthcare, they'll go after our social security, they'll go after anything unless we put an end to it. Unless we decide that that's not the future that we want to see. And I know that's what all of us in this room have already decided. And I know that it's our only option to continue to fight, to continue to keep our heads held high, and do so in a way that brings in other people into this fight with us, because we know we'll need each other. We know we need to depend on one another to do so. So I hope to talk more with everybody here today. I hope to see you at Nakba Day. I hope to see you at Court Support. And I hope to see you every Monday night here at the People's Forum. We have volunteer meetings where we continue to fight, to organize, to work with one another, to bring about the change we want to see here in New York City. So we're here every Monday night at 6:30. We also have a protest today, an emergency response to the court's ruling yesterday on Mahmoud's case, today at 5 p.m. So I hope to see everyone there as well. And Tujang.
Thank you so much, Lamise. I mean, for us at Notator, PYM is such an inspiration, and we're just honored to be in the struggle with you all. Now I will invite up two attorneys from CUNY Clear, Ramsey and Naz, to give us a Know Your Rights training.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ramsey Qasim. I'm the co-director of CLEAR. CLEAR is a clinic and a nonprofit at the City University of New York Law School. I'm here with Naz Ahmad, who's my co-director. We've been working together for many years. By way of introduction, the names that have been mentioned today, Mahmoud Khalil, Yunseo Chung, Rumeisa Öztürk, and others, these are names that are not only familiar to us and dear to us the way they are to you, they're also our clients. And I spoke with all three of them yesterday in connection with their cases. And I can tell you that they are all immensely grateful for each and every one of you, for your presence, for your solidarity, and for your support. Yunseo herself asked both Naz and me to pass on to you her deepest heartfelt thanks for your presence here today and for your continued persistence, not just standing up for her and for others in similar positions, but for your steadfast support for the people of Palestine and their basic human rights, their right to live, their right to liberty. That remains centrally important to all of them. And they look forward to being back with you here and to share space with you. And that's what we're working towards in the legal team on all three of these cases. So my colleague Naz is going to provide an update on where we are with Yunseo's case specifically. And then we'll do a little bit of Know Your Rights and Know Your Options, just so we're all prepared for the different scenarios that have become all too common nowadays.
Other people have mentioned the next court date in Yunseo's case is on May 20th. So as a reminder, a few weeks ago, we went into court to get her protection from detention, and the government, when pressed on what would purportedly justify her detention, couldn't present a reason, and so the judge has ordered that she should not be detained, at least until such time as the judge makes a different order. And we, have legal briefs and arguments that we have to make, challenging the government's ability to detain her and apply this part of the immigration law against her that they're also using against Mahmoud. And so that's where things stand with her case. And as we hope to see some of you on May 20th, and hopefully we'll have a better result, a more permanent result for her going forward after then. But, cases can take a long time. And again, just really want to thank you all for coming out here. It's really impressive and important to see. And like Ramzi said, Yunseo definitely very much appreciates it, as do the others. So without further ado, I think we're just going to go into our Know Your Rights portion. Does anyone have questions about the case that I just opened a can of worms maybe by asking?
You can raise your hand or not. Just stand up and ask the question, please.
So on May 20th, on May 20th, will the same judge who granted the TRO be considering whether or not she should go into ICE custody? Is what will be decided on May 20th? And is there any chance on that date, if the ruling doesn't go in her favor, that she could actually then go into ICE custody right away?
So it is, I would say, unlikely that the judge would make a decision on May 20th. I mean, it's certainly possible, but given the circumstances of the case and given that it involves in some ways, like complex legal issues, I think it unlikely that the judge would issue an order that day. Certainly it is possible, of course, anything is possible. A judge may rule that may lift the TRO, basically, may lift the order preventing them from detaining her. I don't know that that would necessarily mean that she has to be in detention, but they would, if she lifts the order, then theoretically they could still try to detain her.
Yeah, I mean, I would add, and I'm sorry, it was rude of me not to acknowledge, of course, Noduto for organizing this really important event that is so meaningful to us and more importantly to our clients and their families, and the People's Forum, of course, for continuing to stand with anybody who stands with Palestine. I think every day that Yunseo is free is a victory, because the government was trying to make an example of Yunseo. And what she did instead was beat them back. And so, as Naz was saying, whatever happens in court on the 20th, there'll be arguments heard, probably no decision on that day. It's hard to predict when exactly the judge will rule or how she'll rule. Our view is that this case is very clear. The government's own documents make it very clear. At this point, if you look at Yunseo's case next to Mahmoud's case and the documents filed in each, you'll see that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, issued a 2-page memo with 2 names on it, Yunseo's and Mahmoud, and very little, actually I should say no evidence. Basically, the claim in that memo is that based on his say-so, for reasons that he doesn't really explain, he believes that their speech, just their speech, what they've said, in protest, the fact that Yunseo participated in a protest on Columbia's campus, the fact that Mahmoud has been a staunch defender of Palestinian rights and humanity, just their expressive activity that is lawful and protected by the First Amendment somehow poses a foreign policy problem for the United States. Now that's absurd on its face. We all know that. But that's the government's claim. And I think in some ways the absurdity is the point. Because if they can get away with that sort of extreme claim to put someone like Mahmoud behind bars and to try to put someone like Yunseo behind bars, then every subsequent case becomes easy, right? I mean, this is why it's a test case for them. They want to push the envelope here. And that's why, in line with what you've heard from everyone else today, it is really important to draw a line and to take a stand in these cases here today. We cannot, I mean, they were banking on us abandoning Mahmoud, abandoning Yunseo, abandoning Rumeisa. That's what they were betting on. And I think they were surprised to see that there were people in their thousands outside of that courthouse in Manhattan after the first court hearing in Mahmoud's case. And they're surprised to see the outpouring of support for Yunseo online and on the streets for Rumeisa. They didn't expect that. They didn't expect that sort of backlash. So, and they're still betting that by moving people to Louisiana, so now Mahmoud is in Louisiana, Rumeisa is in Louisiana, if they were able to detain Yunseo, you better believe she would be in Louisiana or Texas as well. Why do they do that? Because they prefer the judges there, they prefer the law there, all of that. But most importantly, politically, they want to isolate people from their communities, and they're wagering that we will forget about them. They're wagering that all of you will demobilize, that the crowds will dissipate, that the media attention will fall away, and that they'll be able to do what they want to do in the darkness, which is not just silence speech here, but more importantly, continue massacring Palestinians, right? Because this is what it's all about. And so I think, by your courage, by being here and continuing to be here day in and day out, you're proving them wrong, and they can lose. I mean, I think that's what they don't want us to see, that they can lose. I think Yunseo is showing that they can lose. Mahmoud is showing that they can lose. And we all have a part to do. So I trust that you all will do your parts. Naz and I will do ours. And certainly we're all following the example of Yunseo and Mahmoud and Rumeisa and the others. They've, to Lamis's point, they've kind of pointed us in the right direction. Okay, so now we're going to share with you some information that hopefully you will never have to use, but better to know it and not need it. Okay, so Naz, you want to get us started?
Yes. So we're going to talk about what to do if they show up at your home, and then also briefly about what to do if they stop you on the street, any law enforcement. So the first rule, if you're at your home, is don't open the door. Ask who it is, speak through the door. You don't have to open the door for law enforcement. You don't even have to confirm your name if they knock on your door and ask. So like somebody might knock on your door and ask, is so-and-so home, or are you so-and-so? You don't even have to confirm that. The reason we say this is because law enforcement can only get into your residence with two ways. One is if you give them permission, and two with a warrant. So permission could be you've opened the door and they've put their foot in the door and they walk in and you haven't said anything. You haven't invited them in, right? You don't feel like you've invited them in, but they're in and you're not telling them to leave. A warrant, a valid warrant that allows them to enter your home has to be signed by a judge. It needs to have a few things on it, but the most important thing for everybody to consider here is that it needs to be signed by a judge. ICE has these things called administrative arrest warrants. They are not signed by a judge. They say U.S. Department of Homeland Security on top. So if they don't have a judicial warrant, a warrant signed by a judge, they cannot enter your home. Whatever piece of paper they have doesn't give them permission to enter your home. So that's the first golden rule. Don't let them in. Am I doing number two?
Yeah, and look, I mean, the way it goes is usually police, right? And if it's ICE, it'll be the same. They'll claim to be police. They may not tell you who they are. Our point is it doesn't matter who they are, whether they're actual like police like NYPD or ICE pretending to be police, or FBI or Homeland Security Investigations, which is the agency that showed up at Yunseo's door and Ranjani Srinivasan's door, same agency that took Mahmoud Khalid away from his wife in the night. That's Homeland Security Investigations. It doesn't matter who they are. Exactly what Naz said. Unless they tell you they've got a judicial warrant and you see it, and it's got that judge's signature, and at the top it says United States District Court for whatever, right? That's, that should be at the top. If at the top it says U.S. Department of Homeland Security, you can recycle that piece of paper. That is not a valid warrant. That does not give them the right to enter your home. They're going to act like it does. They're going to threaten you. They're going to say all kinds of things. Our point is, no matter what they say, unless what they slide under your door has United States District Court for the blah, blah, blah at the top and a judge's signature at the bottom, you're not opening that door. Okay? So that's rule number one. And rule number one is what kept both Ranjani Srinivasan and Yunseo Chung safe, because they did not open that door. Ranjani's roommate, and there's video of this online, which is a much better education than what Naz and I are going to tell you today. If you can find that video, you'll see how her roommate admirably applied rule number one the first time. And then the second time they came back with a judicial warrant, and she still behaved in legendary fashion. But we'll get to that.
The second golden rule is don't answer or speak to them without a lawyer present. So you can say some version of, I'm not going to answer any questions, I'm not going to talk to you without a lawyer present, anything that just conveys you're not going to speak to them. And there are lots of reasons we say this, but I'm sure you all can appreciate that there are potential consequences for speaking to law enforcement without a lawyer present. There can be potential criminal consequences. It's a crime to lie to law enforcement. There can be potential immigration consequences. Some of you can appreciate, right, through Mahmoud's case, that if you tell law enforcement something that conflicts with something you put on an immigration application earlier, that can be used against you later on in immigration court, in immigration proceedings. And then unknown consequences. We don't know why they're using the information that they want. So the second rule is don't talk to them without a lawyer. You can just sound like a broken record. If you sound like a broken record, you're probably doing it right. We know that this goes against like some of our socialization, right? If somebody's asking us a question, some of us might feel like it's weird not to answer a question that's directed to us, or it might feel rude. It's okay to be rude. It's okay to sound like a broken record. This is the most protective thing for you in the moment. You can also blame a lawyer. You can blame us. You can say, listen, I attended this workshop and these crazy lefty lawyers told me I shouldn't talk to you without a lawyer present. I think I'm going to follow their advice. Like anything that you feel comfortable saying that just conveys, listen, I'm not going to talk to you. Please be on your way. Just give me your information. The only thing you want to get from them, potentially, is a way to contact them, so that if you contact a lawyer afterwards to follow up with that law enforcement agent, they know who to call, right? Because if they don't leave information, then you're kind of left wondering, which agency is it? Which agency should their lawyer be calling, etc. So that's rule number 2, don't talk to them without a lawyer present.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I know what you're thinking. I don't have a lawyer. That's probably what some of you are thinking. It doesn't matter. If something like this happens, you can contact us at Clear, and we can represent you free of charge. And the way you contact us, many ways to do it, like social media, whatever, but you can go on our website as well. There's a form you can fill out, www.cunyclear.org, and one of our attorneys will be in touch with you to represent you in connection with that. So Naz's point is, you want to find out who they are, you can ask them to drop a card outside your door or slide it under your door, right? You're still not opening that door. You're still not having a conversation. But, that point, they are trained interrogators, and usually most of us are not trained in counter-interrogation. So they will try any number of tactics, ranging from sort of like the honey end of the scale to the vinegar end of the scale, to try to convince you to have a conversation. So they'll be nice, or they'll say something crazy like, somebody told us that you're a dangerous person, you're this, that, or the third, to try to elicit a response from you and get a conversation going. Now, how many of you here think that it is a crime for them to lie to us? Okay, good. Because the law, of course, actually permits them to lie to us. But remember what Naz said. Is it a crime for us to lie to federal law enforcement agents? Raise your hand if you think that's the case, and you would be right, because it is, and it's punishable by 5 years in prison. And there's an enhancement for so-called terrorism cases that goes up to 8 years. So it's a crime for us to lie to federal officials. it's legally permissible for them to lie to us. And even a very basic question. I mean, we're talking a lot about immigration today, right? I mean, Yunseo's case, Mahmoud's case. Even if they ask me, where are you from? And I say, oh, I'm from Algiers. Now that, as a matter of immigration law in the United States, means that now all of a sudden the burden is on me to prove to them that I have status here. If I'd said nothing, the burden would be on them to prove what's called in US immigration law pretty offensively, quote unquote, alienage, right? They would have to prove that I'm a non-citizen without status if I said nothing. But the moment I tell them, oh, I'm from a foreign country, then now the burden is on me to sort of like, the burden is shifted to me, and legally they can take me in until I show them a visa, a green card, or a US passport or naturalization certificate, right? So just keep that in mind, especially in the immigration context. Don't say anything. It doesn't matter what they say. And especially if they might threaten to arrest you. A lot of times that's a bluff, but especially if they arrest you, you don't want to say anything until you have a lawyer in the room. All you say is lawyer, I want a lawyer, I want a lawyer. That's it. So that's the second golden rule.
And then the last one is if for whatever reason they have entered your home and you have, temporarily forgotten these rules, but then all of a sudden you remember them, you should also not what's called give consent to a search. So if they've somehow ended up in your home, tell them that you don't give permission for them to search, you don't give permission for them to look around. And this is mostly important in the circumstance that if they find something that they want to use against you later on, and you've told them that you don't give them permission to search, a lawyer representing you can argue that they're not allowed to use what they found against you. So you just say something, a version of, I don't want you to search, I'm not giving you permission to search, I don't consent to you searching, something along those lines. And again, this is mostly important for a situation where they want to use something they have found against you later on, whether that's in criminal court or even immigration court.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the way most of the time, in a lot of the cases we've handled it clear, they've gotten what they call consent to search somebody's home or somebody's bag, would not meet our common sense understanding of anything that's consensual and non-coercive, right? So what they say is, open the door, police, right? Now that sounds like an order. And most people are just gonna obey that. But what they will write in their report is that the person voluntarily opened the door and that it was a consensual entry because they didn't have a warrant. Or show me what's in your bag, and they'll grab you on the street, right? That happens to many, young men of color in this city. So it's a phenomenon that has come back in full force under Eric Adams, mostly for Black and Latinx youth, right? So they'll grab your bag and they'll be like, open your bag. And that's actually, it sounds like an order. It sounds like you don't have a choice. But the way the report is then written up is that the person consented, right? So of course you want to use your judgment. You want to get out of that situation as safely and as quickly as possible. And you're in that situation, so your judgment is the most important. So if it feels like you're going to be physically unsafe, if you don't open that bag, you should do what's going to keep you safe. But usually what you can do is to say, I don't consent, and let them open the bag. They might do that anyway. They don't have a right to do that, but of course they do a lot of things they don't have a right to do. But at least then you've given your lawyer later on an argument in case they find something in that bag, right? So that's just the way you want to apply that knowledge in a practical situation that's very tense. But again, your lodestar is do whatever is going to keep you safe, get you out of that situation as quickly as possible.
I'm also just going to talk about now what to do on the street before we do the skit. So important caveat on the street is that, you're obviously not behind a door. So the most important thing to say is am I free to leave? And just keep on asking that. Again, sound like a broken record. You're not required to confirm your name or identity on the street. If you're being stopped by New York City Police Department and it's clear to you that these are NYPD stopping you, if they ask for your name or ID, just consider that if you don't provide it, they have the discretion to take you to a precinct to verify your identity. But with respect to somebody who's stopping you on the street, who's clearly in plain clothes and you don't know whether or not they're police, just keep asking, am I free to leave? And don't provide your name or confirm your name. And this is like something that we've seen with sort of with Mahmoud's case and with Rumaisa's case in particular, confirming your name on the street to ICE, if they're looking for you, is enough for them to arrest you, right? If they're looking for you and you confirm your name to them, it's enough to arrest you. So it's a really important thing to keep in mind for people who aren't citizens, who have concerns about being targeted by ICE. So again, if you're on the street, the most important things are, am I free to leave? And don't confirm your name if you have concerns about being targeted by ICE.
Yeah, and just again, in the spirit of getting yourselves out of that situation as quickly and as safely as possible, as Naz said, you are repeating, am I free to leave? And until the answer is yes, then you stay put. And you just keep on repeating the question, okay? If they say anything other than yes, you stay put. The moment they say yes, you just leave. You're not having a conversation with them about what it was about. Sometimes they'll come up to you and they'll be like, do you know why I stopped you? Whether it's a traffic stop or even if it's a stop and frisk on the street, you're not answering that question. You're just saying, am I free to leave, okay? And once you hear that yes, you just leave. Okay, so now we're gonna apply this. How much time do we have? Okay, should we go straight to the right way?
Yeah, sure.
All right, we need a volunteer. Please. Oh, we got 2 volunteers. Come up, come. I think 2 volunteers is good. Now, do you want to be the agent? All right. Okay. So, all right. So here's our setup. Our two gracious volunteers, they're behind the door. So you're roommates. You live together. You're behind the door, and I'm going to play the role of an ICE agent. I'm going to play the role of somebody from Homeland Security investigation. Okay. So I'm behind the door. That's the setup, and let's see how they do with our rules. Police, open the door. Police, open the door. I know you're there, all right? We saw you come into the building. We saw you come into the apartment. Let's just make this easy. It's really not going to take more than a couple of minutes of your time. Please open the door. I just have a few questions for you. I'm here with my partner. Police, this is the police. We know you're here. Listen, we know you're here. We know this is scary. You don't have to worry. You're not in any serious trouble. It's just, it's ICE. It's a civil matter. We just want to talk to you about it. It's not a criminal matter. We just want to ask you a few questions. It's about your roommate, Naz. We know she lives here. And we know you're in the apartment, so let's just settle it very quickly. You really have nothing to worry about. Look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. I'm going to be here today. I'm going to come back tomorrow. I'll be back the day after tomorrow. We'll be waiting for you outside your building. There's no point in delaying this. Let's just have a conversation, and you don't have to worry. You'll be able to call whoever you want to call. If you want to call a lawyer, you can call a lawyer. But there's no getting away from us. So, we can do this easy or we can do this hard.
Do you have a warrant signed by a judge?
Yes, we have a warrant.
Slip it under the door.
Sure. So what I'm slipping under the door is like a piece of paper that's signed by my supervisor at ICE, and it says at the top, U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So now I've slid it under the door, and now they have it. All right. Okay, so open the door. As you can see, that's a warrant. It's a warrant for the arrest of your roommate, Naz. It's really like a civil thing. It'll be painless. Don't worry, she's not going to a real prison or anything like that.
Just a city district.
It's not. It's
not. Yeah, could you open the door, please? Good.
Can you pass the one that was signed by the judge, because this is not it?
You're misinformed. We don't need a warrant signed by a judge. This is a warrant for the arrest of Naz. It's signed by an official of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So could you please open the door now? I mean, look, we'll come back with a judicial warrant if that's what you want. I mean, is that really what you want?
The official signed by the judge.
All right, I'm sorry, what's your name? I know you're there. I saw there's two of you in there. We saw you come in. You know, we were working surveillance outside. You know, just give us your names and we'll be on our way. Fine, have it your way. Sorry, what are your names? Your actual names now for purposes of saying hi to everyone.
I'm Nubia.
I'm Kyungwon.
Thank you both. Well, I was going to say, any questions?
You're good teachers.
There's a, yeah.
It's not just a random person.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the two questions are, how do you know that somebody at your door is actually ICE? Like maybe it's somebody making a delivery. And the second question was similar on the street. How do you know that they're law enforcement and not just a random person who's like attacking you? I would say that usually most of the time when they're knocking on the door, they will say that they are some version of law enforcement. They won't necessarily say they're ICE, but they will say they're some version of law enforcement. And so, you know, if you have concerns, right, not everybody has concerns about being targeted by ICE, but if you do have concerns about being targeted by ICE, let's say somebody is coming to your door and you're not expecting them, you're not expecting a package or delivery or et cetera, you can refuse not to open the door, like if you think that's the safest thing for you. The same thing on the street. I would say that once you've seen like an undercover officer, it'll become easy for you to identify that they're wearing, you know, plain clothes, etc. But especially if somebody is stopping you on the street and they're not clearly identifying themselves to you as law enforcement, you should, if you have concerns that you think they are law enforcement, you should still say, like, am I free to leave? Or, and if they haven't identified themselves to you as law enforcement, and at that point you could probably walk away. But again, we want you to like think about your safety and in these ways. And I will say one other thing is that we've seen from the videos that they're now like masking, right? Because they don't want to be identified. And so, not that it's uncommon for people to be masked on the street these days, but that's another thing to keep in mind if you're being stopped by anybody on the street who's wearing plain clothes, that's a possibility if you are concerned about being targeted by ICE.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, look, your colleagues, like the volunteers, did it perfectly, and they could have like not said a word to me the whole way through, okay? The only thing I will add is like the second question that you asked is such a pertinent question, because when Rumesa was taken at Tufts, and we actually filed a declaration from her in her case yesterday where she describes more that experience. And she says precisely that it wasn't until they had taken her across state lines twice, like from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to Vermont, and it wasn't until she was in Vermont that she actually realized who they were. Because up until that point, she thought that the people abducting her were the same people who had doxed her online because of her op-ed that she had co-authored about, you know, the university standing by the student senate resolutions supporting Palestinian rights. So she thought like the doxers who were threatening her online were the people abducting her. She didn't know if they were law enforcement or ICE until, you know, they were already across state lines. So, you know, I'm just saying that because I think a lot of times in that kind of situation, it's really hard to know. But Naz's advice is really what you should do. So, two questions?
Hello. So the question from Zoom watchers is, what happens if you leave and police are waiting for you outside your apartment?
And let's do the second question too.
Hi. So I can't speak for everyone's living situation because everyone is pretty different. But I live in like a subletted bedroom in an apartment, and because of like issues of language barriers and relativity, I, for one, know my rights thanks to you too. But maybe the tenant that I live in may not. So let's say in a situation where ICE comes in, and because these tenants don't know their rights, they let ICE in, but I'm still locked and cooped up in my bedroom. My question is, can I still, keep myself safe using those rights in my subletted room situation?
I'm going to answer that question first. So even if you live with other people, they can technically give access to law enforcement to places that are shared spaces that they normally have access to, but in a situation where even you're not there, they are not considered to have the authority to give law enforcement access to a space that they don't normally have access to, like your bedroom. So in that kind of circumstance, yes, theoretically, you could refuse to open the door. If the door isn't locked, I would imagine that ICE would probably just walk in, unfortunately, because they do things they're not supposed to do.
Yeah, and look, to go back to the examples of Yunseo's case and Ranjani's case, because they were not allowed into the apartments with their fake administrative warrants, like the one that I gave our colleagues who volunteered here today, they went and obtained a judicial warrant, like an actual warrant signed by a judge under what we believe to be false pretenses. So they said, we're investigating Columbia, not the students. We're investigating Columbia University for illegally harboring quote unquote aliens. And as part of that investigation, we need to search these apartments, Yunseo's and Ranjani's apartments, to find some documents in connection with that investigation into Columbia. Now, the reason we say that was pretextual was because thanks to one of the roommates, we actually have a video of how that went down when they showed up with the actual judicial warrant and they were let into the apartment. And that video is available online, and you'll see they're not looking for documents, they're looking for people. What they were hoping was to get into the apartments legally with this warrant under false pretenses, like under this pretext that they're looking for documents, but really what they were hoping for was to arrest Yunseo and Ranjani on encounter. To be like, oh, here you are, and we have this like administrative arrest warrant for you, and so we're going to take you now, the way they took Mahmoud. But that didn't work out for them. But Naz's point is that, yeah, legally, like your room, only you can grant them access to your room, as long as I guess you don't leave your door open all the time and your roommates are coming in and out.
The other question was, what if police are waiting for you outside your door? There, again, it's a matter of am I free to leave? If they have a way to confirm identification of you and they have a warrant to arrest you, then it's not really something that I would say you can avoid. The safest thing for you to do, again, in that situation, if you're being stopped, is ask, am I free to leave? Until you're given an answer. And if they say yes, you can walk away. If they say no, you should stay put.
And the safest thing for you to do if they say no, or if they're here to arrest you, they know it's you, even if you didn't tell them your name, but they have your picture, which is the way it might go down. If they're arresting you, then the things that are within your control is like, one, not empowering them over you. And the two main ways you can give them even more power over you is if you do anything that they can misinterpret or misrepresent as resistance. That gives them more power over you. So don't do anything that they're going to be able to misinterpret or misrepresent as you resisting arrest. And the second thing you could do to give them more power is to answer their questions, right? So if you are being arrested, right, the two things that are within your control to keep yourself as safe as possible is to not give them an excuse to say you're resisting arrest, and to not give them any additional ammunition or power over you by answering questions. That should not happen. You should just insist on, if they're trying to question you, just say, I want my lawyer. And it doesn't matter what they say or what they show you, right? I don't know, they might show you text, they might show you pictures, do not respond, do not engage. Just say, I want my lawyer. Okay. So I think we're at time, but I know that people have more questions. Would you like us to call it? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramsey and Nas. Maybe y'all could ask them questions later if they stick around. And I'm sure there's a lot of resources on their website as well, cunyclear.org, I think it was. We'll now take a short moment to share some announcements. The reason that this energy has been sustained for a year and a half, the reason that there are new people here today and showing up on a weekly basis is because of the work of organizers who are doing outreach, who are talking to local businesses and with their neighbors. And that crucial work in between the rallies, in between the meetings, the events, is what sustains this movement. So to bring attention to that work, I'll bring up Peace and our comrade Angie to give some announcements for upcoming meetings that you can join.
Hello, my name is Peace. I'm in Nodutor, and I'm going to talk about how one of the easiest and most effective ways to get involved is to come here again for Shut It Down for Palestine's weekly volunteer meetings. Yay! So I'll tell you how it goes. In this building, every Monday at 6:30 p.m., people at the forefront of the movement here in New York provide a grounding and political analysis around what's happened in the last week before offering like 2 to 3 directives that volunteers can focus on for the week ahead. And then people come up and announce various relevant things going on around town that you can show up for. And then volunteers break out into groups by borough because there are so many volunteers from all over New York, New Jersey, what have you. And in the groups, you meet volunteers who are also your neighbors so that you can work together on advancing the struggle in your neighborhood. There's also a group for artists who come up with amazing ways to contribute their gifts to the struggle as well. So if this sounds cool to you, we agree. This town hall is actually just modeled after the volunteer meetings. Can our Shut It Down volunteers in the audience raise your hand? In case people wanna talk to you or learn more about the meetings. Kind of looks like I'm preaching to the choir. But if you've never heard of that, and maybe you're new to Solidarity with Palestine, and this is a great place to get your questions answered, to get connected to community and resources. Like there's a Understanding Zionism course that's starting at the end of this month. I think it's here. Yeah, it's here, and there's also a virtual option too. So, if you've, I just urge you to commit to like one meeting and bring your friends, and I'll just say that the volunteer meetings over the past year and a half have truly become like a cornerstone, a home base, like just a warm, empowering, I would even say like a sacred space for so many people who just want to do the right thing. So can we just actually clap for Shut It Down, and thank you so much for all the work that you do to organize us. And to the rest of you, if you haven't already, come see for yourself. And yeah, now is the time to get into it. So, and I promise it's worth it. And I think that's it. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Hey everyone, my name's Angie. I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And as we've heard very clear, we have a task, right? And the task is to get organized. And you all came to this town hall trying to figure out what it is you can do, and the answer is to simply organize. If you don't know what the word organize means, that's great. Because it means that we are building, that we're bringing people in to organization, that we are building our power, right? Because we have to reach every single person who is being affected by repression, which, you know, spoiler alert, it's the working class, it's all of us, right? So we have to be able to get involved, get into organization, and the PSL is hosting weekly We Fight Back organizing meetings in every single borough, right? They're at different times and different dates, but they're consistent weekly. And if you go to NYC PSL, you can see all the different organizing meetings that we have. And therefore, people who are looking and trying to figure out how it is that we organize and fight back, and what is this moment, and how is it progressing week to week, right? So we give updates on the current political moment, both nationally, internationally, and locally. And we are training people and figuring out how it is we can continue to build our power, not just locally, but nationally. And that's our task, right? So does everyone understand the importance of this moment and the importance to come into organization and the ability that you have as a person to make that a priority, right? Because we can't wait for things to flip and for a system that has no interest in our needs to suddenly work in our favor, right? Whether it's workers' rights, women's rights, queer rights, all of the rights that have ever been afforded to us have been won through organized struggle, right? And so that's why the call is to join an organization. So I hope you all can find us online and come with us in person and join the journey of the struggle.
Okay, so that concludes the program portion of the event today. We'll now break into groups and again discuss, things we've learned, any more questions you might have, and then figure out what we can do once we leave here today. But just to plug, again, we have a letter writing station back there where you can write letters of support to Yunseo, which will be given to her lawyers. And then we have screen printing over there with James from Old Town Press. It's free, and you can grab really cool prints. So please feel free to stop by either of those tables. Now for breakout, I'm going to see what the borough breakdown is, but if it's not that even, we'll just break down based on where we're sitting. So raise your hand if you're representing Manhattan. Yep. Queens. Okay. Brooklyn. All right, yeah, this is what I thought. Jersey. Oh. Okay. So I think we'll just do where we're sitting. That sound right? Okay, so this group, y'all are a breakout. Maybe move your chairs so you're sitting in a circle. And then this group, let's divide in half. Feel free to bring your chairs all the way up here and create 2 circles. And we have facilitators for each of them. And then Zoom will have their own discussion. Hi, Zoom. Okay. And then don't forget 5 p.m. rally for Mahmoud after this. Maybe hang out at TPF and we can all go together. And the breakouts will also discuss, potential business outreach. We have flyers for it, so have fun.
Zoom people. There are some questions. Maybe I can copy and paste into the chat. There's primarily two questions, I think, and the second one is quite meaty, so I'll drop them in so people can read. Here are the two questions. So the first is, yeah, there's the SoCal breakout group. Okay, so the first question is, one, share something you learned today about Yunseo's case or from the KYR Know Your Rights training. Do you have any questions? Yeah, feel free to jump off mute if you want to answer this first one.
I can speak. So I was a little bit late. I was about 20 minutes late, so I missed the first part. But for the Know Your Rights training, I thought, yeah, I thought they did a great job in that I've been to other Know Your Rights trainings, and it's mostly been, and they've done the other, other organizations, they've done good jobs too. But I thought this was the first one that I've attended where they explained why why not why not do things like the way I guess we might think to, like how we might think to respond instinctively. And it kind of made me wish that there was also a Korean speakers version for that, because I know for certain family members that I know, I don't know, especially older, like more stubborn family members. It's like if they don't understand the consequences of like what could happen, some of the rules for what not to do, they can be easier to forget. So yeah, I kind of wish there was a Korean speaking version for that as well. But yeah, I learned today why not to speak, definitely why not to lie. Didn't know about the 5-year sentence, and yeah, that was really helpful.
I can share just as like something that you've probably seen the like Know Your Rights red cards, but there is a Korean version of it. And some of the groups here in LA have been kind of handing them out to people. I can send a link to that. But yeah, it's like a condensed version, obviously not as comprehensive as the training that we received today. But it is a really great point in terms of like language accessibility. Yeah, any other thoughts that are coming up for people on question one?
I know one question I had following the rights training, and I think I wish now that I'd thought to ask it, but I was a little slow. I actually mask because I'm very COVID conscious. It's actually not to hide my identity. It's because I'm COVID conscious. And I am concerned about the ability, I guess lawful, and then of course the police might just do whatever the hell they want anyway, but their ability to make you unmask. Certainly if you're taken into custody, can they make you unmask? And I wish now I'd asked that question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like maybe if we collect questions, we can maybe like try to send out afterwards if there's any other questions that are coming up for people, and maybe so there's someone in the Zoom that knows the answer. I don't personally, but there is like some, like that's a really real thing.
As I know there are many people in the COVID conscious community certainly who might be reticent about going out to protest whether this or other matters because they are concerned about what happens with masking if taken into custody.
Right. I mean, and even with these cases, right, like the ICE officers in like Mahmoud's case, I remember was like, or like one of these, or like they're wearing masks, like they're trying to hide their identity. There's some irony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of what they can do. Okay. Anything else from point 1? There's quite a lot in question 2. Maybe I can start reading the questions and people can, yeah, jump in if you want to answer them. But just thinking like, what are some actions or events that we can self-organize? I'm not sure also where everyone is based. I'm personally in LA. But yeah, to help us have a structured discussion, we wanted to provide parameters for actions we can take. For example, the attorneys have recommended that we not target ICE for our actions as they are already oppositional and would try to repress our efforts immediately. What we do recommend is outreach at local businesses to put up our flyers in support of the students, hosting letter writing parties to send to Yunseo, phone banking our friends and family to learn more about what's going on and take action, and just joining weekly outreach efforts with the Shut It Down for Palestine Coalition if you're in New York. Yeah, what are people's thoughts on this, and if you have any other ideas? Oh, definitely. Yes, definitely law enforcement has absolutely no regard for safety.
Hi, I have a question. Can you hear me? Yeah, so thinking about these like protests, like going forward and like public facing and like kind of the role or ethics of like photography, documenting the movements themselves, but also like people are getting identified and doxxed through these events for like, cause of like guilt and things of that way. Does Norutal have any sort of like information graphics or any sort of like an ethical standard or how you guys like approach that or talk about it? I'm a photographer with like a network in like journalism and things like that, and thinking of ways that I would be able to like share within communities, like how to like photograph and document protests ethically and things like that. I don't know if you guys have resource or just question or just like answers around what you think is the best approach to that, or like how I could like try to organize some sort of like teach-in or talking about that within like, I guess, the photographic or journalistic community.
Yeah, this is a great point. Does anyone have any answers for this? I'm not aware that we have any sort of like document for this, but something we do, for instance, at events is events that we have like little stickers of people who are like comfortable with being photographed, and they can like or not comfortable with being photographed, and they can wear a sticker that kind of indicates that for photographers and documentation. When it comes to protests, I know that a good rule of thumb is generally to avoid posting people's faces. But yeah, I'm not sure beyond that how to answer this question. So yeah, opening it up for anyone who has thoughts here.
So I just have something. I'm not a professional in the legal system or anything, but I have been to protests, and I can tell you that as a naturalized citizen, I found myself putting signs in front of my face, which I've never done before in my life, when people started turning up with cameras and videos. So I do think the utmost like air towards caution, because this, I have a feeling, can, accelerate quickly. It's just a matter of time before naturalized citizens will get targeted, in my opinion. I think that's how it's going, and nobody is safe. And those of us of color, I think, also have to protect ourselves best as possible. I understand that bravery is great and it's commendable, but unless you have the resources to be able to just jump ship or, go off to Canada or hop on a plane like that very evening, I think we all have to take more caution, be far more cautious than we might have been in the past. And so for the photographers, also just taking that into consideration that even naturalized citizens right now, some of us we're not feeling as brave as before.
Yeah, definitely agree in this, like, especially right now in this, like, moment of heightened escalation. I would definitely agree with emphasizing, taking these kind of precautions for people. I mean, like masks are great for the COVID conscious, but they're also great for concealing your identity. I know that for our events and our actions, we do ask people to mask. There's like a dual purpose in that as well, which can help a bit with identity. Any other thoughts coming up for people? Maybe I can speak a little bit to other parts in this question. One of the things that was like, identified as things like we can do as actions or events to self-organize in support of our students. Something that SoCal is doing today, actually, after this town hall, is gathering together and writing letters of support for Yunseo. So letter writing parties, I know that there's other groups actually in LA that organize around Koreatown that are also going to be doing letter writing parties. That's a pretty, I think, actionable thing, and the letters will be sent out before her next trial, which is May 20th. There's also a link if you wanted to submit digitally for the letter campaign. I think it's via Action Network, and there's a link probably somewhere. But that's something that you can do also as well.
Yeah, I think that in general, like a big thing we also need to take into mind is the importance of being in community with other people and what that can look like to different people. I mean, to people in general is going to be dependent on their circumstances, where they're located, and their proximity to others. But being part of an organization of like-minded people who organize towards the same goals, I think that's always going to be one of the most actionable things you can do in terms of not only defending yourself, but yeah, defending others and pushing for those protections too. So I think that's just one thing that comes up for me. And you need to be in an organization to carry out these letter writing parties too, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, more than, it's really important now as ever to be organized and being with people to think about like what we can do. Yeah, reading groups is definitely something you can start with just a couple friends. But yeah, there is power in numbers. And I think that is a really great point. Thank you, Erica. And Kelly as well. I'm not sure how much time we have left. Maybe 5 minutes. I'm not actually sure. But I'm also not sure where everyone is located, but I did want to boost that at least if you're in New York, I think they will be mobilizing on Nakba Day on May 17th, as well as continuing to keep people updated on Yunseo's hearing on May 20th. You can find that information on our social media, on Noduto social media, for more updates on that. And then also if you're in New York, yeah. Church communities, definitely. If you're part of like kind of already existing community groupings, I think that's a great way to kind of get people engaged and aware of what's going on. Because these things, you know, like when it comes to like immigration and stuff, you don't really have to be, I think, an activist to be worried about these kind of things. Like this can target this kind of thing will affect everyone in our communities, in some sense. So that's a great point. Any other thoughts, maybe to like any closing thoughts or lingering questions? Even if we don't have the answer, I think it's nice to just kind of voice them and then maybe we can follow up with people. But yeah, I just want to hold a couple minutes before we close for people to do this.
Has there been discussion about, campaigns towards our elected officials? They do not have the jurisdiction, I understand that, but they are prone to pressure. And it's just one prong of many, right? It's sort of, you need the public opinion, but it sort of, well, I don't even know where Yunseo is from, which is great that I don't know anything about her. It's fantastic. I imagine that they are also planning worst case scenarios, but mobilizing and solidarity activities are great. And I think there's also the other part of it, which, sounds boring and almost is antithetical, can feel antithetical to what groups like this are trying to do, but I don't think necessarily does any harm. So I'm just curious what your thoughts, what the approach is. Is there kind of a party line on that from Nodutor?
Wait, sorry, could you repeat the question real quick? Something about pressuring elected officials, or was that? Maybe also there are other Noruto members here who caught the full question, sorry, and could help answer.
Hi, maybe I can try responding. Is the question whether Naruto does pressure elected officials or not? We're definitely not opposed to it. It's not necessarily something that we would put a lot of effort into. But if there are folks who are already coordinating that kind of effort, I think we wouldn't be opposed to boosting that.
Right, I'm just talking as an adjacent effort. It didn't seem like you were the kind of organization that would focus on that. That's clear. Which is, everyone has their specialty. But just as one aspect, right? There's the public opinion forming aspect, and there's the actual bodies putting forth aspect, and there's the solidarity aspect. And our elected officials have proven to be rather lame and useless. I understand that, but they're still our elected officials. So while they're in office, they hold a certain amount of power, which they mostly don't wield at the moment. But it feels like a losing endeavor, but that's still an avenue that I think that I know that a lot of people who are not in their 20s, let's just say slightly older, have not abandoned that, and conceptually haven't abandoned it. So it's a way to also get sort of other constituencies involved.
Yeah, definitely. I think I personally believe in like all fronts. We don't necessarily have to do one thing over the other as a whole movement. As an organization, we have limited resources and capacity. So for now, we can't necessarily expand into these other venues of organizing. But if there are already efforts happening, we can coordinate maybe better in different regions too. I don't think we have the capacity to initiate those kinds of things at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And thank you for bringing it up, Ali, and for answering Haruki. Any other, I think, last thoughts? I think we are a bit over the time, not that it's a big deal. But if not, I can also close us out.
Last question. I feel like I'm hogging up the airspace, but
No worries.
especially in the tri-state area and across nationally also, there are alumni of these organizations, right? Like one of these schools is my alma mater, and I am beyond disgusted, but I don't quite know what to do about it because, you know, when you graduate from one of these schools and you give $1 billion, you're the president of the United States, you get a lot of attention, but being one of many doesn't necessarily do it. But I'm sure that there are others, and I wonder if you've heard anything about that or within ranks, or you know, are there sort of like little groups that are sort of discussing, you know, that avenue? Like when the encampments first came around, there were a bunch of us who were like, we're never giving you a dime ever again until the day we die. I don't know how much they cared, since the billionaires tend to have more money, but it's still bad PR for the schools.
Oh my God. Uh, okay. Sorry, yeah, these are all great points. Thank you so much for attending. Sorry, I was also trying to take some notes. But I feel like maybe, you know, if you have an alumni network or something like that, and seeing if they'd like to get plugged into the mobilization. Let me pull up the date for that again. I think it was on Nakba Day, May 17th, I think. But yeah, and then the hearing again is ongoing to May 20th. So yeah, thank you for joining. I think that they're wrapping up in person, so we can wrap up the Zoom call as well. Yeah, thank you again for joining. Please stay connected. I think there'll be some follow-up. But yeah. Thank you, everyone. I'll close out the Zoom now.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.